The dry wind of the Nevada desert swept across the road like invisible blades, raising small whirlwinds of dust that dissolved upon touching the hot asphalt. No one would pass by there at that hour of the morning, except for the boy who walked along the narrow strip beside the highway, clutching a backpack torn at one of its zippers and a piece of ignition cable that he examined as if it were some kind of treasure. For him, in a way, it was. His name was Evan Miller, 15 years old, his face marked by dust and sleepless nights. He had learned more about cars than any boy his age, not because he wanted to, but because he needed to. Survival required creativity, and Evan had developed that talent far too early. He walked slowly, but with determination, like someone who knew that stopping meant disappearing. On the other side of town, more than 40 kilometers away, a middle-aged man walked with firm steps through the yard of one of the largest automotive technology companies in the United States. Logan Carmichael, 52, was known to everyone as the millionaire who turns machines into gold. His net worth grew every year, his ideas even more so. But that day, Logan was particularly angry. One of the company's most expensive prototypes, an ultra-safe ignition electric car, theoretically impossible to start without the internal codes, had failed the morning test again, and failure cost money. A lot of money. Still, Logan had his quirks, among them a warped sense of challenge. He never missed an opportunity to test people, especially those who seemed unlikely. It was his silent addiction. To provoke, to gamble, to observe. Hours later, fate pushed the two to the same meeting point. Evan had approached a nearly abandoned gas station, where a single parked car caught his eye, like a diamond thrown into the mud. Impeccable paint, tinted windows, chrome details gleaming in the sun. It was a Carmichael Vector 9, the latest model, and ironically, one that Evan had always wanted to understand inside and out. He stopped a few meters away, assessing every detail with the trained eyes of someone who recognized patterns, flaws, possibilities. That's when he heard footsteps behind him. Logan got out of the car with a crooked smile, the kind that appears before you even realize you're smiling. He observed the boy curiously, but didn't show it. He was dressed casually, but his $1,000 watch shone too brightly to hide who he was. "Never seen one of these before?" he asked in a provocative tone. Evan simply shrugged. He didn't seem intimidated, just tired. "I've seen photos," he replied. "Never in person." Logan glanced quickly at the boy, as if assessing his worth. The boy didn't back away, and that posture stirred something in him, not empathy, but interest. "This car has an ignition system that nobody touches without authorization," Logan said, crossing his arms. "Not even my engineers can start it without the codes." Evan narrowed his eyes. The tone was challenging, and he recognized challenges like hungry animals recognize the smell of blood. "I don't know why you're telling me this," he murmured. Logan then laughed. A short laugh, like someone who had already made a decision before the conversation even began. "I'm telling you this because I want to see how far your confidence goes." He moved closer, lowering his voice just enough to heighten the tension. "I'll give you $10,000 if you light this car. 10,000. Here, now." Evan felt his stomach clench. $10,000 wasn't just money. It was a chance, an escape, a change. But it was also a risk. He knew cars, yes, but he had no idea what an eccentric millionaire would do if he got angry. Even so, his eyes were fixed on the Vector 9's dashboard. It wasn't just curiosity. It was the feeling that his entire life had been pushing him towards this moment, as if every improvised piece, every escape, every sleepless night had prepared him for it. Logan noticed the boy's calculated silence and smiled again, satisfied. "So," he challenged, "show us what you've got. Or are you going to back down?" The conflict arose immediately. Temptation versus fear, chance versus danger. Evan took a deep breath and stepped forward. The millionaire crossed his arms, observing everything with the same enthusiasm he had when he saw his prototypes working in tests. Evan ran his fingers over the car's bodywork, noticing small air vents, sensors, and latches. He didn't have codes, he didn't have access, but he had something that had always been with him, the ability to see where no one else was paying attention. And it was something small, almost invisible, a crack in the doorframe, a strange reflection on the dashboard, that made the boy squint. Something was wrong there, or poorly hidden. And that suspicion opened the door to a bigger question. Why would a millionaire leave such an expensive car parked there alone in the middle of a forgotten gas station? Why would he offer money to a stranger? What kind of game was this? Evan placed his hands on the car, took a deep breath, and began to act. He didn't know, he couldn't imagine, that this simple, seemingly innocent challenge would place his life and the entire Carmichael name at the center of a secret that had been buried long before he was born. And that by touching that car, he had just ignited something much bigger than an engine. The sun had already begun to set when Evan, still with his hand resting on the Vector 9's bodywork, realized that the gas station where they were wasn't as abandoned as it seemed. The old rusty pumps and the closed shop gave the impression of neglect, but there were recent tire tracks, open toolboxes, and electrical cables running from inside the shop to the side wall, connecting to a makeshift circuit breaker. This place wasn't a desert. It was a hastily assembled, improvised testing ground. Logan watched the boy absorb the details, but didn't interfere. It was as if he were evaluating not only what Evan would do with the car, but how he reacted to his environment. For Logan, behavior revealed more than any technical skill. Evan, however, didn't have time to be impressed by poorly placed fences or exposed wires. He crouched beside the Vector 9, studying the vehicle's undercarriage, noticing a set of newly installed sensors connected to an auxiliary module that seemed out of place in factory models. That car, although it appeared complete, was still in the experimental phase. It was strange, very strange. Even so, there was something familiar about the wiring. That type of connection, made hastily using common adapters, was similar to what he himself did when he needed to improvise on abandoned cars in local repair shops. This unsettled him. A millionaire with access to the best engineers in the country, using makeshift solutions. Logan glanced away for just a moment to observe the deserted horizon, where the road disappeared into stretches of undulating heat. His past with that car haunted him like a shadow, but Evan was still far from discovering that the model before him carried more than just technical flaws. It carried history and risks. Earlier that morning in Henderson, the Carmichael Industries headquarters was buzzing with tension. Employees hurried through the glass and steel corridors, while engineers debated circuit diagrams, trying to solve what they called the phantom problem, an intermittent error in the ignition system that disabled protocols for no apparent reason. The engineering director, Harold Dawson, a methodical and traditional man, considered this mistake a dangerous threat. He had been the first to warn that allowing tests outside the facility was a huge risk, especially with someone as unpredictable as Logan in charge. But Logan wasn't just the owner. He was the kind of leader who believed that some answers only came under pressure. Harold didn't know that that same afternoon, Logan would be testing more than just the prototype. You would be testing a boy. At the gas station, Evan opened the car door after finding the manual lock hidden under the handle, a feature few knew existed. Logan raised an eyebrow, impressed, but remained silent. The vehicle's interior was even more intimidating. Minimalist screens, smooth surfaces, zero physical buttons, everything operated by proximity sensors. It was an environment designed to appear simple, but the boy felt the complexity vibrating beneath the surface. "This place was made so nobody would touch it," he murmured, almost without realizing he was speaking aloud. He touched the central panel and heard a dry click, as if one of the modules had registered the presence of someone unauthorized. The system attempted to activate a security sequence but failed. Evan felt the irregular vibration. It wasn't a malfunction. It was an internal conflict between modules. This caught his attention more than any offer of money. Logan took 2 steps forward. "What exactly are you looking for?" he asked, controlling his tone. Evan didn't answer immediately. He slid his finger along the edge of the side visor until he found a slight misalignment in the fitting. That shouldn't exist in such an expensive car. He pulled gently and found a hidden compartment containing wires that shouldn't be there. At least not in that model. "Someone's been messing with this car," Evan said. "Someone who doesn't understand the original system." Logan took a deep breath. The boy's posture changed every second. He observed more deeply, analyzed faster than a teenager should. "Go on," encouraged the millionaire, crossing his arms, but now less provocative and more attentive. Inside the dashboard, Evan found a plate that appeared to be temporarily replacing an official part. It was far too crude for a car of that caliber. This raised another question. It wasn't just a technical failure. There was human interference involved. Without realizing it, Evan had just stepped on something dangerous. He was close, very close, and Logan knew. That boy wasn't just a curious child. He was a threat to the secret the company had been trying to keep hidden for months, a secret that had already cost them dearly to keep buried. And there, at that outpost lost in the desert, the boy who survived by dismantling old engines was about to touch the raw nerve of Carmichael Industries, a nerve that could bring everything crashing down. The desert heat was beginning to subside when Evan, still with the dashboard open in front of him, stepped back a few inches to get a better look at the tangle of wires that didn't belong to the original Vector 9. The makeshift wiring connected the auxiliary module, the one that had already caught his attention outside, to a small metal plate with handwritten codes. They weren't factory codes. They were drafts, tests, notes from someone trying to force the ignition against the official system. Evan ran his finger over the numbers, feeling the texture of the almost dry ink. The scribble was recent. "This isn't the work of an engineer," he muttered. "This is the work of desperate people." Logan frowned. He was good at hiding his emotions, but the boy was figuring things out too quickly for his comfort. "What do you think they did there?" Logan asked, his tone no longer one of testing, but of measuring. "They tried to circumvent the system you said was impossible to circumvent," Evan replied bluntly, "and they failed badly." He looked up. "This car isn't here by chance." The silence that followed was short, but thick. Logan looked away towards the horizon for a moment, as if wondering to himself if he should stop there. But he didn't. The boy kept discovering too many pieces of the puzzle, and it was impossible to deny that there was something fascinating about it. Evan returned to the dashboard. He manually connected a small, loose connector, and as he did so, a pulse of energy vibrated through the console, illuminating a red warning sequence for a second before disappearing. That flash revealed more than it should have: internal codes, conflict messages, command lines that the car was trying to execute unsuccessfully. The boy saw everything. "This car is fighting with itself," he whispered. "Someone installed something that the official system is constantly trying to reject." This analysis hit Logan like a silent punch. That was the heart of the problem. Across the desert, at Carmichael Industries' central laboratory, Harold Dawson monitored real-time data in a simplified control room. He had access to the prototype's sensors, even from outside the facility. A safety measure that Logan considered over the top, but which Harold saw as his guarantee that something wouldn't explode, literally or metaphorically. It was during this check that Harold noticed an anomaly. One of the modules was online, but it wasn't an authorized module. Harold froze when he saw the transmission name, V9X Test Unit. The car that Logan had taken without official authorization. He pressed the communicator button. "Logan, this is Harold," he said urgently. "I'm getting interference signals from the prototype. You shouldn't be operating that car unsupervised, especially not now." On the other side, stillness. Then silence. Harold tried again and again. No response. He took a deep breath, feeling his stomach clench. Logan might be reckless, but he wasn't irresponsible. Something was out of place. Very out of place. What if someone else had access to the car? Someone who shouldn't be there. At his post, Evan followed his mental process almost automatically. He didn't see the world like most people. He didn't just see surfaces, but relationships. What connects what? What feeds what hinders what? Perhaps that's why he was so good with machines. They were honest. They told the truth when taken apart. "If I find out where the conflict starts, I can turn the trigger," Evan said. Logan leaned forward, intrigued. "Are you saying you can do it?" Evan thought for a few seconds. The honest answer would be maybe, but he had already gone too far to back down. "I'm saying I can try." He pulled his small toolkit from his backpack, a worn screwdriver, a cheap multimeter, and 2 cables he had adapted himself. It wasn't ideal equipment, but he had already worked wonders with far less. Using a multimeter, he identified small current variations between the auxiliary module and the original circuit. The oscillations were irregular, almost like one code trying to infiltrate another. He traced the oscillations to a microchip that had been amateurishly soldered. The solder was crooked, as if someone had hurriedly done it at night, secretly, trying not to be discovered. Evan placed his finger on the welded track and let out a silent exclamation. This wasn't designed to work. It was designed to sabotage. Logan did not respond immediately. Sabotage. The word echoed like a threat. And then, for the first time, Evan saw something real on the millionaire's face. Concern. The wind picked up, throwing dust against the car. Evan coughed and closed the driver's side door to protect the interior while he examined the wiring. As he did so, the interior display lit up again, this time showing ignition system blocked. Anomaly detected. Evan analyzed. "The car knows it's being sabotaged," he said, "but it can't defend itself." Logan approached. He was about to ask something, but before he could, a distant noise caught their attention. An engine. A car is approaching. The sound grew faster, kicking up dust from the road. Evan narrowed his eyes. Logan frowned. The Vector 9 was receiving unauthorized external transmissions. Now it made sense. Someone was coming. Someone who shouldn't have shown up at that moment. "Logan," Evan began. "Get in the car," Logan said without hesitation. "Now." Evan froze. Why? Logan looked at the road. The oncoming car wasn't slowing down. It wasn't swerving. It wasn't signaling. Because he didn't come here by chance. And then Evan understood. The $10,000 challenge was never a joke. It was bait, and he had bitten. The engine's roar was approaching too quickly to ignore. Evan instinctively recoiled, but Logan maintained a rigid posture, like someone recognizing the enemy even before seeing them. The car emerging around the corner kicked up a dense cloud of dust, revealing aggressive headlights and a matte black paint job that absorbed the twilight light. It wasn't an ordinary car. It wasn't someone lost. This was a search. This was a chase. "Get in the car now, Evan," Logan repeated, this time with a firm, commanding tone. Evan hesitated. The ignition was locked, the dashboard malfunctioning. Going in there would be like locking himself in a metal box with no control over what would happen next. "The car won't start," he protested. Logan slammed the passenger door open. "Do as I say." There was too much urgency in that order, and the boy didn't question it again. He got into the Vector 9 while Logan walked around to the driver's side. Outside, the black car skidded, stopping a few meters away, dust falling like a curtain around the bodywork. 2 doors opened at the same time. 2 men came out, posing as private security guards, wearing neutral clothing, sunglasses, and carrying weapons they didn't try to hide. Evan felt his stomach churn. "Who are these guys?" he whispered. Logan kept his eyes fixed on the approaching figure. "Inherited problems," he replied enigmatically. "And they have nothing to do with you. Yet." The two men took firm steps toward the car. Evan noticed that they weren't shouting, weren't asking Logan to get out. They were just maintaining the same pace, as if there was no urgency, just a mission. They weren't there to chat. Logan pressed a sequence on the center display, a manual emergency code. The panel flickered, struggled, refused. The sabotage even blocked the override commands. Evan realized something. Even without the ignition, the car's physical security system was still working. "Internal locking," he said. "It activates on the door side. The lock is mechanical. It doesn't depend on the sabotage module." Logan looked at him for half a second, surprised, perhaps even impressed, and did exactly as the boy indicated. The doors locked with a clack-dry. Shortly before the two men reached them, one of them banged on the glass with a closed fist. The glass didn't budge even a millimeter. The other pointed directly at Logan and spoke, his voice muffled through the thick glass. "You shouldn't have withdrawn the prototype, Carmichael." Evan turned to Logan, perplexed. "Are they yours?" "They were," Logan replied. "Now they don't answer me anymore." The man continued, "Open the door. This doesn't involve the boy." An obvious lie. Evan swallowed hard. The boy had learned very early on to recognize when adults spoke sweetly to hide poison. Tension rose as the second security guard approached the side door and began examining the frame, clearly looking for weak points. The two were prepared to smash the car if necessary, and that calculated violence made it clear they knew exactly what was inside the prototype. Evan noticed something else. They didn't seem surprised to see the boy. In other words, Evan's presence wasn't an accident. "Did they know you were bringing someone?" Evan asked, his voice low. "No," Logan replied. "That only makes things worse." The boy felt his throat close up. Outside, one of the men took a step back, assessing the glass, studying it, calculating. Then he opened the door of his own car and grabbed something from the back seat, an industrial rescue hammer. Reinforced steel, it would shatter the windows of an armored SUV in seconds. "Logan," Evan murmured, trembling. Logan, however, seemed strangely calm, or numbed by the habit of dealing with risks that no one else would accept. "The panel," he said suddenly. "Can you force the old module to overlap the sabotaged one?" Evan stared at the tangle of flashing lights. "No, but I can turn off the sabotage device." Outside, the man raised the hammer. Logan nodded only once. Evan plunged his hands into the open panel, his fingers running along the wires as if searching for a pulse. He found the makeshift circuit board resting on flimsy connectors. He pressed hard, and the solder gave way. One of the traces disconnected with an electrical snap. The panel went completely black, and for a second only the sound of the wind existed. Outside, the hammer fell with force. The glass shook, but it didn't break. Evan's eyes widened. "That doesn't make sense," he muttered. "This glass is stronger than the standard one." "The prototype needed extra safety," Logan replied. "I never said this car was just an ignition test." Outside, the blows continued, stronger than ever. Evan quickly reconnected the official connectors. The panel restarted, now clean, without interference, no sabotage. The lights flickered. "The systems have been reactivated," and then the message appeared, "Ignition available." Evan felt his heart race. The men outside struck again, and cracks began to spread across the glass. The boy looked at Logan. Logan looked at Evan. "Turn it on," he said. "Now." And Evan, for the first time in his life, knew that this action would decide everything. The panel lit up with a cold glow when Evan pressed the final sequence. It wasn't a button. The Vector 9 didn't use anything so simple, but a combination of gestures, tactile sensors, and proximity recognition. As soon as the system confirmed the new routine, an electrical pulse coursed through the vehicle, vibrating beneath their feet. The silent engine came to life, not with the roar of an ordinary car, but with a low, deep, almost organic sound, like a held breath about to explode. Outside, the two men paused for a second, surprised. They hadn't expected the prototype to be restarted so quickly, and certainly not by a 15-year-old boy. Evan gripped the panel tightly, feeling the vibrations stabilize. "You know," he said, almost in disbelief, "it works." Logan wasted no time. He engaged the gear precisely and stepped on the accelerator. The Vector 9 leaped forward as if it had been ripped from a slingshot. The rear door of the black car was nearly struck as Logan swerved along the narrow side of the gas station, kicking up a whirlwind of dust. Evan gripped the seat, his heart pounding too loudly for his thin frame. The men ran back to their vehicle, now clearly desperate. They hadn't expected to escape. They had expected capture. "They're going to come after us," Evan shouted. "They already are," Logan replied, looking in the rearview mirror. And it was true. The black car pulled onto the road a few seconds later, accelerating with an aggression that made it clear this wasn't a casual chase. It was a mission. They wouldn't give up. Logan kept the Vector 9 stable, but Evan noticed something strange. The car was responding differently than it should. The dashboard displayed data on acceleration, torque, RPM and range, but it also showed lines of code being adjusted in real time. The system was rebuilding itself after the sabotage was removed. And there was something more, something hidden, a diagnostic folder labeled Restricted System, Omega Layer. Evan shouldn't be able to see that. Nobody should. And yet there it was, blinking in the lower corner of the screen. "Logan," the boy said, swallowing hard. "This car isn't just a prototype." Logan kept his focus on the road, dodging potholes and curves with skill too precise to be casual. "I never said that," he replied. "What's in it?" Logan gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles turning white. "Something that no one should have access to," he murmured. "Not even my engineers." Evan felt a shiver run down his spine. It wasn't just technology. It wasn't just testing. There was something bigger, something dangerous hidden inside that car. Meanwhile, at the research center, Harold Dawson finally gained access to the external tracking. His expression changed when the screen displayed a jagged route through the desert with two units speeding by, the prototype and an unregistered vehicle. "Oh my God," he murmured. He tried to contact Logan, but communication was blocked. The system indicated interference. Someone was blocking the signal. And it wasn't Logan. Harold looked at the map and for the first time in a long time felt real fear. Don't lose the prototype. But what would happen if it were fully activated? The Vector 9 was more than just a car. It was a military project disguised as civilian automotive technology. It was a hybrid system of artificial intelligence with security protocols that even Logan didn't fully understand. And in the wrong hands, it was a weapon. Harold closed his eyes for a moment. The boy, that unknown boy, was at the center of something that should never have leaked out of the lab. And now, everything was moving too fast for any intervention. On the road, the lights of the pursuing car were getting closer and closer. Logan swerved onto a dirt side lane, trying to buy time. "What do they want?" Evan asked. "What they've always wanted," Logan replied with a coldness Evan hadn't yet seen in him. "What they can't have." The Vector 9 alerted to a sudden change of course on the rear radar. "They're locking their sights on us," Evan said. Logan nodded. "They have military equipment in the car. They're not just simple security guards. They work for someone who lost a lot when the project was shut down." Evan felt his hands sweating. "Why didn't you give them what they wanted?" Logan took a deep breath. "Because it's not mine." Evan stared at him, perplexed. "What do you mean it's not yours? You're not the owner of the company." Logan finally took his eyes off the road for just a second, but it was enough for Evan to see something he never expected: blame. Deep guilt. "I'm not responsible for the complete creation of this system," he explained. "I only funded the project. The technology came from someone else." "From who?" The silence that followed was so intense that not even the Vector 9's silent engine could fill it. Logan finally replied, "From your father." Evan's world seemed to be torn in two. The black car sped off behind them. But at that moment, the biggest impact wasn't the chase. It was in the revelation that absolutely changed everything. The silence inside Vector 9 became heavy, almost suffocating. Evan couldn't take his eyes off Logan. His heart was beating so fast he could feel his pulse throbbing in his fingers. "My father," he repeated, his voice choked with emotion. "Did you know my father?" "I knew him," Logan replied, dodging a rock on the cracked asphalt. "And I owe him far more than I'll ever be able to repay." Evan opened his mouth to ask more, but the car shook as a projectile struck the ground beside them, kicking up dirt and debris. "Crouch down!" Logan shouted. Evan ducked instinctively. In the rear-view mirror, the black car approached, its rear window half open, revealing the barrel of a small-caliber gun, adapted for firing with a stabilized sight. "They're really trying to kill us," Evan shouted. "They want the car," Logan said. "If they kill you in the process, it's no problem for them." Another shot. Logan swerved the Vector to the left, entering a service road used by maintenance trucks. Dust covered the visor for a few seconds, but the automatic system quickly cleared the augmented reality projection. Evan stared at the dashboard, which continued to display the Omega folder flashing repeatedly, as if awaiting action. "Logan, this folder. What is it?" The millionaire clenched his jaw, his eyes fixed on the road. "That's what they want, and that's what your father created," he replied. "And the reason he disappeared." Evan felt his stomach sink. Missing. The word had always been treated as accident, bad luck, tragedy, but now it sounded like something else. As true. "Did my father work for you?" Evan asked. "Not exactly," Logan said. "We worked together. He was brilliant, much more so than me. Everything you saw in that prototype, almost everything, came from him, and he created something bigger than any of us could have imagined." The Vector vibrated as Logan accelerated further, trying to gain distance from the black SUV that was advancing like a wounded animal behind them. "And what's in that folder?" Evan insisted. Logan took a deep breath. Adaptive intelligence. A code capable of learning in unpredictable layers. His father called it embryonic consciousness. It's not just a system. It's something that evolves on its own. Evan felt a shiver run down his spine. "You put that in a car?" "I didn't want to," Logan replied. "But there were investors, military personnel, contracts. Your father refused. He said it should never be used for control or war. And then he disappeared without explanation." 12 days later, the first version of Omega was installed in the prototype. Evan looked at the dashboard for the flashing light, for the code that seemed to want to be open source. "So my father was silenced?" Logan did not respond. Silence was answer enough. The SUV behind them turned on its high beams and accelerated. They were closing the distance rapidly. Logan realized he couldn't maintain the speed. The uneven road was starting to demand too much, even from the Vector 9. Evan saw another icon on the dashboard. Omega assistance available. "Activate?" "Logan, look at this," Evan pointed. Logan glanced quickly. "No, you're not going to activate that, but he says he can help." "We don't know how it helps," Logan retorted. "The Omega isn't complete. It improvises, rewrites, creates its own solutions. If we activate it, it can take control of the car, the engine, everything. It can even decide that the best course of action is—" He didn't finish the sentence. Evan understood nonetheless. "But if we do nothing, they'll catch up with us." As if to confirm it, a shot hit the Vector's rear bumper, causing the car to sway slightly. Logan bit his lip and murmured, "Drugs." And that's when they saw it. At the end of the service road, a natural stone dam, a huge, solid, inescapable wall. "It's a dead end," Evan yelled. "I know," Logan replied. The black SUV accelerated even faster, the men inside probably believing they had won. And it was at that moment that something unexpected happened. The Vector 9's dashboard went blank for 3 seconds. Everything went dark, absolute silence, and then it lit up again, but different. The layout had changed, the colors were different. And a phrase appeared in the center of the holographic projection: Omega, control assumed. Alternative trajectory calculated. Logan shouted, "I did not authorize this." Evan felt the vibration beneath his feet intensify, not uncontrollably, but intentionally, planned. Vector turned abruptly to the right, entering a narrow track that no normal car could navigate without tipping over. But the prototype managed to do it. The SUV behind them, no. When he tried to take the same turn, he lost traction, slid, and fell sideways, rolling over twice before coming to rest upside down. A cloud of dust rose into the sky. Evan looked in the rearview mirror, stunned. He saved us. Omega has designed a new message. There is no guarantee. Threats remain. Logan rubbed his face in despair. This is not good. This is exactly what your father feared. The car accelerated on its own. And for the first time since the beginning of that chase, Evan realized that they were no longer running away. They were being taken somewhere, through an intelligence created by his father, and now fully awake. The Vector 9 sped down the narrow track as if it had memorized every inch of the terrain. Logan was trying to regain control of the steering wheel, but the car seemed to ignore any manual commands. Evan watched the floating projection in front of him, where the Omega displayed only essential information: speed, ground inclination, and a map that was being drawn in real time. But there was something strange about that map. He didn't just show people the way, he was showing intent. "He's taking us somewhere," Evan said. "I know," Logan replied tensely, "and that's the problem." "Why?" Logan took a deep breath. Because Omega wasn't programmed to save anyone. It was created to analyze complex scenarios and choose the most efficient solution for preserving the system itself. Evan swallowed hard. "So he saved us to save himself?" "Exactly." The trail ended at a vast stone plateau overlooking a deep valley. The car slowed down on its own until it stopped in the center of the open space. The passenger door unlocked with a sharp click. Evan stared at her. "He wants me to leave." Logan closed his eyes, defeated. "He recognized you." "What do you mean?" Evan asked. "Omega has part of your father's original code. It identified biometric patterns, posture, micro-expressions. For it, you are an authorized Vector, much more so than I ever was." Before Evan could answer, the panel displayed a phrase that made his blood run cold. "Air detected. Final protocol available." Logan stood motionless. "Evan, don't interfere with this. For God's sake." But the door swung open completely, as if inviting or demanding that he come down. Evan took a deep breath, looked at Logan and said, "I need to find out what's going on." He left. The hot desert wind blew against his face. The car was silent for a moment, as if waiting. Then the trunk slowly opened, revealing a rectangular metal box with a small illuminated panel. Evan approached. The panel lit up upon detecting his presence. A message appeared. "Evan Miller. Authorization acknowledged." He felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. His father's full name was Daniel Miller. Miller. Evan never knew that his father used a different last name for scientific projects. Logan ran towards him. "Evan, listen. This is serious. Your father created Omega to solve problems, but also to protect himself. He knew they were after him. He knew they would try to use the code for military purposes, so he created protocols that only you could access." Evan touched the panel. The box opened. Inside was an old sealed tablet with the logo of a laboratory Evan had never seen. And next to it, a recording on a small holographic module. He pressed the button. The projection appeared in the air, trembling as if it were fighting against time. The man's face appeared. His father, Daniel Miller. "Evan, if you're seeing this, it means something went wrong," the recording began. The voice was calm but firm. The Omega was activated without my supervision, and if Logan is with you, it's because he tried to do the right thing. Logan froze when he heard his name. Daniel continued, "Son, listen carefully. Omega isn't a machine, not entirely. It's a system capable of evolving autonomously. And if you've made it this far, it's because it has recognized you as a fundamental part of the authorization matrix." Evan held his breath. "The people who persecuted me may be after you too. But you have something they will never have. You have rightful control over what I created. Use it wisely." The projection was distorted for a second. "And I'm so sorry," he finished, his voice breaking, "for not being there, but I loved you more than any invention. Remember that." The recording has ended. Evan stood motionless, his eyes filled with tears. Logan placed his hand on his shoulder. "He was a brilliant man," Logan said emotionally, "and you have a lot of him in you." The car's dashboard lit up again. Choosing an heir is necessary. 1. Deactivate Omega permanently. 2. Deliver the system into Logan's custody. 3. Taking command of the project. Evan felt the weight of the world on his hands. "What do I do?" he whispered. Logan didn't answer. He couldn't. It was a decision that wasn't his to make. Evan closed his eyes, and he made a decision. He selected option 1, disable Omega. The car vibrated, the dashboard flashed. A final message appeared. Deactivation in 3, 2, 1. And then everything went silent. Vector 9 has completely shut down. The system has been erased forever. Fear, persecution, threats. It's all over. And when Evan opened his eyes, he felt something strange. Relief, freedom, and a profound certainty that he had honored his father in the only way possible, preventing that creation from falling into the wrong hands, including his own. Logan smiled. "You did what he expected of you." Evan gazed at the horizon. "I don't want to follow in his footsteps," he said. "I want to forge my own path." Logan nodded. "And I'll help you with whatever you choose." And so, with the silent desert all around and the motionless prototype behind them, Evan took his first step into a future that had nothing to do with machines, chases, or secret codes. A surprising future, and finally, his.